Brother Elias adjusted the stiff collar of his robes, the fabric rough against his neck. The scent of consecrated incense, a blend of ancient resins and synth myrrh, hung heavy in the air of the Grand Temple of Graceland. Sunlight filtered through stained glass depictions of the king's sacred symbols, the TCB lightning bolt, the velvet jumpsuit, the golden microphone cast shifting patterns across the polished floor. Elias was young, barely 20 cycles, yet his devotion was as deep and true as any elder's. He believed with every fiber of his being in the king who had ascended from earth in a flash of divine light, leaving behind a legacy of harmony, love, and the sacred rhythm that governed the universe. His teachings, distilled through centuries of devout interpretation, formed the bedrock of their society. Every song was a scripture, every move a parable, every lyric a divine commandment. Today was the festival of the Hound Dog, celebrating the king's boundless loyalty and tireless pursuit of righteousness. Choirs sang ancient hymns, their voices amplified by hidden sonic resonators, filling the vast space with a sound that was both ethereal and deeply comforting. Elias stood among the ranks of junior priests, his heart swelling with a familiar mix of reverence and awe. He remanded the Kfos Streif 5 fee, the K's, Pive, Elias, Comtes, ye yield the sick. He spent his days in quiet contemplation, studying the ancient scriptures, holographic projections of grainy black and white, moving images, meticulously restored and revered. He helped guide pilgrims through the sacred halls, pointing out the holy relics, the shimmering scarf said to have absorbed the king's sweat, the replica of the legendary pink Cadillac hovercraft, the sacred guitar forever enshrined in a crystal sarcophagus. Yet sometimes a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor of unease would ripple through his otherwise serene faith. It wasn't doubt, not truly, more like a lingering question, a faint echo that he couldn't quite place. The scriptures, while profound, often felt strangely metaphorical. Why did the king shake, rattle, and roll against the forces of darkness? What was a blue suede shoe, and why was it so important not to step on? The elders explained these as divine metaphors for the fragility of goodness, the importance of personal boundaries, the need to protect purity. Elias accepted these interpretations, but a small part of him wondered if there was a deeper, more literal meaning lost to time. He had once dared to ask Brother Theron, one of the senior scholars, about the "love me tender" incident. The scriptures described it as the king's first miraculous healing, where his voice alone soothed a riotous mob into peaceful contemplation. Was it truly a song, Brother Theron, or a divine incantation? Brother Theron had smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. All the king's songs are divine incantation. Elias, his very voice held the power of creation. Do not seek to dissect the miracle, but to embrace its truth. Elias had nodded, chastened. He understood. Faith wasn't about empirical proof. It was about belief. And he believed in the shimmering, almost otherworldly figure depicted in their hollows, the one with the impossibly perfect hair, the enigmatic smile, the boundless energy that seemed to leap across the centuries. After the services, Elias was assigned to the temple's vast data crypts, a labyrinth of shimmering servers holding trillions of archive historical records, the echoes of eternity, as they were called. His task was to catalog new additions from recently unearthed pre-ascension data drives, ensuring they aligned with the accepted narrative. It was tedious work, but Elias found a quiet satisfaction in the meticulous organization of knowledge. He spent hours surrounded by the cool hum of the databanks, scrolling through thousands of lines of code, verifying authenticity tags, and cross-referencing keywords. Most of it was mundane, old agricultural records, architectural schematics, forgotten culinary recipes. But occasionally, a fragment of something more intriguing would surface, something that briefly snagged his attention before he filed it away. A distorted image of a spinning disc, labeled vinyl, a string of seemingly random numbers, 56 to 2097. A fragmented audio clip, too garbled to decipher, but with a strange rhythmic beat he meticulously followed. Protocol, flagging anything that seemed genuinely significant for deeper analysis by the High Council. The rules were strict. No personal interpretation, no speculation, just objective classification. The truth, they taught, was already revealed. Their job was to preserve it. As the twin suns of their planet began their slow descent, painting the temple's stained glass in fiery hues, Elias accessed a newly transferred data drive recovered from an excavation site far in the Outer Rim territory. It was old, incredibly old, its data, fragile and corrupted in places. The preliminary scan indicated it contained archaic entertainment media, which usually meant simple children's games or primitive audio dramas. He began the slow process of data recovery, watching the progress, struggling to yield its secrets. A small part of Elias felt a thrill of anticipation. What forgotten echoes might be hidden within another hymn of the king, a lost teaching? He dismissed the thought, yet the persistent echo of that small, unplaceable question continued to resonate within him, a subtle hum beneath the surface of his devotion. He leaned closer to the console, ready for whatever the ancient drive might reveal. The ancient data drive hummed, its power indicators flickering erratically as Elias attempted to coax its secrets free. Most of the files were fragmented, corrupted by millennia of dust and cosmic radiation. He spent the better part of the next 2 days trying various recovery protocols, his fingers dancing across the holographic keyboard, his brow furrowed in concentration. Finally, a faint directory structure appeared. Most folders were unreadable, but one, cryptically labeled Memories, showed a promising integrity score. Elias clicked on it, a small surge of excitement bubbling in his chest. Perhaps a personal journal of an ancient devotee, a collection of pre-ascension testimonies. The folder opened to reveal hundreds of files, most just as corrupted as the drive itself. He scrolled through despairing until one file caught his eye. It was a single image, remarkably intact. Considering its age, the Foreignictum was Epista 72 Negub. He clicked it. The image slowly materialized on the console screen, pixel by pixel, like a ghost resolving itself from the digital ether. It was a depiction of the king. Elias recognized the familiar regal posture, the wide-legged stance, the outstretched arm. But something was off. King, in their scriptures, was always portrayed as ethereal, almost glowing, his features softened by reverence, his form often partially obscured by divine light. This image, however, was startlingly clear, too clear. It showed a man, yes, undoubtedly, the king, but a man. His face was visible, crags and lines evident around his eyes, a bead of sweat glistening on his temple. His hair, while still perfectly coiffed, seemed to defy gravity in a way that looked less like divine artistry and more like hairspray. And his clothing, instead of the flowing robes or the radiant light form depicted in temple art, this king wore a jumpsuit, a white jumpsuit intricately embroidered with what looked like golden eagles, but still a jumpsuit. It seemed functional, practical, not the kind of garment a divine being would wear. Elias stared, his mind wrestling with the image. He zoomed in on details. The microphone in his hand looked solid. The stage beneath him was a stage complete with cables and monitors, not a cloud or a celestial sphere. The people in the background weren't worshipful supplicants, but a crowd, their faces contorted with expressions of joy, excitement, and something else. Adoration, perhaps, but a very human kind of adoration. Pre-ascension artistic rendition, he murmured, trying to rationalize it. Primitive attempt to capture the king's essence before true divinity was understood. But the explanation felt hollow even to his own ears. The image was too concrete, too real. It lacked the spiritual abstraction of the temple art. He found another file. An audio file this time. Also, remarkably intact, labeled Hound Dog Live 69. This must be a sacred hymn, Elias thought, his heart quickening. A rare, raw recording of the king's own voice, perhaps. He adjusted the playback settings, preparing himself for the soaring, perfectly harmonized tones he was accustomed to. He pressed play, a crackle of static. Then a sudden explosive burst of sound. Not the stately, reverent hymns of the temple. This was wild, thumping, driving rhythm of drums and a twanging, aggressive sound he identified as an ancient bass, guitar, and then the voice. It was undeniably the king's. The timbre, the range, the power. It was unmistakable, but it was raw, unpolished. There was a growl in it, a vibrant, almost primal energy that was utterly unlike the modulated, serene voice used in their rituals and the lyrics. You ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. Elias froze. He knew hound dog as a sacred metaphor for the pursuit of righteousness, the tireless. This sounded like a literal dog, and the tone so playful, almost teasing. It wasn't a hymn. It was a song about a dog. His mind reeled. He listened again and again. The music was infectious, pulling at something deep within him, a rhythm that made his foot tap involuntarily. He found himself swaying slightly to the beat, a completely inappropriate reaction in a sacred data crypts. He scrolled through the lyrics, which were included as a text file. You ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. Well, you ain't never caught a rabbit, and you ain't no friend of mine. This was not sacred scripture. This was irreverent, blasphemous, even by the standards of the High Council. What did it mean? Was this a corrupted file, a trick of the ancient data? Elias quickly saved the files to a secure private partition of his personal PAFAD, deep within encrypted layers he had learned to create as a young tech novice. He knew instinctively that showing this to anyone, especially Brother Theron or the High Council, would be disastrous. It would be deemed heresy, an attack on the very foundations of their faith. Powered down the console, the hum of the servers fading into silence. The silence, however, was no longer peaceful. It was filled with the echo of that strange, driving music and the image of that very human king, sweat on his brow, a mischievous glint in his eye. The cracks in the gospel had appeared, and Elias for the first time felt a flicker, not of doubt, but of an immense, overwhelming curiosity. What else was hidden in the echoes of eternity? What other truths lay buried beneath centuries of interpretation? He felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. His world, once so solid and predictable, had suddenly become vast and unknowable. He had to know more. He had to find out what these strange echoes truly meant. The image of the king in the white jumpsuit, sweat on his brow, and the raw, unholy sound of hound dog gnawed at Elias. He couldn't sleep. The sacred hymns that usually brought him peace now seemed hollow, their perfection a facade. He replayed the audio clip on his private PAFAD, his earcoms barely audible, hidden beneath his pillow. Each listen deepened the enigma, and with it his resolve. He knew where to look. There were whispers among the junior priests, hushed tales of the restricted archives, a sealed section of the Grand Temple's data crypts. This section purportedly contained highly volatile and unverified pre-ascension data deemed too dangerous for general access. The High Council guarded it fiercely, citing the need to protect the faithful from heretical interpretations and misinformation from the time before Enlightenment. To access it, one needed a Level 5 security clearance, typically reserved for High Council members or senior research scholars. Elias, a humble, Level 2 had no legitimate way in. But he was also a gifted tech novice before choosing the priesthood, a skill he had since kept quiet, believing it to be a worldly distraction now. It felt like a calling. Over the next few days, Elias meticulously planned his approach. He studied the temple's holographic schematics, memorizing server pathways and access points. He observed the patrol patterns of the temple's automated security drones and the shifts of the few human guards. He discovered a rarely used maintenance tunnel leading to a sub-level directly beneath the restricted archives. The night he chose was dark, the moon a sliver behind the clouds. The temple was quiet, most priests deep in their sleep trance. Elias moved like a shadow, his soft priest slippers making no sound on the polished floors. He slipped into the maintenance tunnel, the air cool and damp. Smelling of ozone and ancient dust, he bypassed 2 security locks with a modified optical scanner and a carefully crafted digital key. His heart pounding in his chest like a drum, he emerged into a dimly lit chamber. This wasn't the pristine, humming data crypts of the main temple. This was a place of forgotten history. Ancient physical data drives sat on dusty shelves, their metallic casings dulled by time. Holo projectors, long defunct, gathered cobwebs. The air was thick with the scent of aged electronics and paper, a forgotten aroma in their synth-driven world. The time before enlightenment, he whispered, looking around. This was the refuse of that era. He found the main console for the restricted archives. It was old, its interface clunky and unfamiliar. But Elias's innate understanding of systems quickly adapted. He began to search. Kaidops pulsed in his mind. Hound Dog, jumpsuit, stage, live. He found more images, hundreds of them. The king in countless variations of the white jumpsuit, in black leather, always with a microphone, always on a stage, always with a microphone, always surrounded by adoring crowds, not kneeling in prayer, but screaming down their faces, not of spiritual ecstasy, but of pure, unadulterated joy. He saw images of the king with other people, men and women, smiling, laughing, not disciples. He saw a woman, her face filled with love, standing beside him. He saw a small girl sitting on his lap. The official scriptures made no mention of the king having personal relationships, only his divine love for all humanity. This was deeply unsettling. He found more audio files, a different voice announcing, "Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest entertainer in the world, Elvis." Elvis. The name struck him like a physical blow. The king was simply the king. Was this an ancient title? A cult-like designation? Clicked on another audio file, one labeled Heartbreak Hotel Studio 56. This one was different. Slower, melancholy. But the voice again was unmistakable. "Well, since my baby left me, I found a new place to dwell. It's down at the end of Lonely Street at Heartbreak Hotel. Heartbreak, loneliness." The scriptures depicted the king as serene, joyful, a fount of endless compassion. They never spoke of him experiencing human emotions like sorrow or loss. He found a document labeled Biography Zip. Elias's hands trembled as he opened it. It was a long, detailed text, a historical account. He began to read, his eyes devouring the words. It spoke of a birth in a small town called Tupelo, Mississippi, of a humble family, of a young man who loved music, who sang in church choirs, who worked odd jobs to make ends meet. It spoke of his rise to fame, his revolutionary music, his impact on a generation, his struggles, his triumphs, his death. Death. The word resonated in the silent archives, a thunderclap in the stillness. Elias stumbled back, his tepod clattering to the floor. The king had not ascended. In a flash of divine light, he had died. He was a human being, a man. The revelation was a hammer blow to the foundations of his world. Everything he believed, everything he had dedicated his life to, was a carefully constructed narrative. A truth twisted beyond recognition. The king was not a god. He was Elvis Presley. A sense of nausea washed over him, followed by a profound, cold dread. He had stumbled upon a truth that could shatter their entire civilization, undo centuries of faith, and perhaps destroy everything he had ever known. But beneath the fear, a different emotion began to stir. A quiet, almost reverent awe. A man. A real man. And his music, it was still powerful. Still incredibly, breathtakingly alive. Questions were gone, replaced by a terrifying, exhilarating clarity. He had to learn everything. Elias spent hours in the restricted archives, lost in a whirlwind of information. The old console hummed a comforting companion in the face of his unraveling reality. He devoured every text, every image, every audio clip he could find related to Elvis Presley. The name now resonated with a different kind of power, a human resonance that was almost more profound than the divine one he had known. He learned about his birth year, 1935. His full name, Elvis Aaron Presley. He saw photos of him as a child, a teenager, a young man with a shy smile and eyes full of dreams. This wasn't the distant, perfect deity of the temple. This was a relatable person, someone who had lived and breathed and felt. He found articles describing his rock and roll music, a genre of powerful rhythmic songs that blended various cultural influences. He read about his concerts, not as sacred rituals, but as electrifying performances that captivated millions. The description spoke of his charisma, his unique movements, his ability to connect with people on a visceral level. He found footage, albeit heavily corrupted and flickering, of his live shows. The shaking, rattling, and rolling wasn't a divine metaphor for battling evil. It was a dance, a vibrant, energetic expression of music and joy. The T-shaped cross wasn't a symbol of divinity, but the very literal shape of an electric guitar, an instrument Elvis played with passion. The velvet jumpsuit wasn't a divine garment, but a stage costume, an elaborate outfit designed to dazzle and entertain. Each piece of information chipped away at the old narrative, but instead of leaving a void, it filled it with a richer, more vibrant tapestry. The man Elvis was more complex, more interesting than the god. The king, then, he founded a highly corrupted data chip, labeled Interview V67. Most of the data was unreadable, but a small section showed signs of life. Elias spent another hour painstakingly recovering what he could, his tech skills pushed to their limits. Finally, a voice emerged from the static, faint but clear. It was the king's voice, but not singing, not preaching. It was speaking. "You know, I never really thought about it like that," the voice said, warm and slightly drawly, distinct from the polished voice Elias knew from the hymns. "I just love to sing, always have. Since I was a little kid, my mama used to tell me I was born with music in my soul." Elias felt a lump form in his throat. "Mama, the king had a mother earth, and the people," the voice continued, a slight pause, a hint of genuine emotion. They understood. They felt it too. It was like we were all connected through the music. It wasn't about being famous or anything like that. It was about sharing something good. "What about the pressure, Mr. Presley?" Another voice, and interviewers interjected, "The expectations, the constant spotlight." A sigh, a very human sigh. That gets tough sometimes. You want to give him everything, you know. You want to make him happy, but sometime, you just want to be a regular fella. Have a quiet moment. Sit on the porch with a guitar and just play for yourself. Elidiale fella. Not a cosmic entity, but a human being who loved music, who wanted to connect, who felt the pressure of expectations, who sometimes just wanted a quiet moment. He found another audio file, this one labeled Jailhouse Rock Film 57. He knew Jailhouse Rock as the sacred scripture of liberation. The king, freeing the unjustly imprisoned souls with his divine rhythm. He clicked play. The music exploded from the console speakers, a powerful driving beat, even more energetic than Hound Dog, and then Elvis's voice, raw and full of swagger. "That's rock, everybody. That's rock." The sound filled the archives, vibrant, uncontainable. Elias found himself grinning, a wide, genuine smile he hadn't realized he was capable. This music wasn't serene or meditative. It was exhilarating, joyful, defiant. It made him want to move, to dance, to shout. The shock was still there, the sense of betrayal to the old beliefs, but it was overshadowed by an immense feeling of discovery. The king was real. He was a man, and his music in its original form was not just spiritual. It was deeply, profoundly human. He spent the remaining hours until dawn downloading as much of the intact data as his PAFAD could hold, prioritizing audio and video. He wanted to hear every song, see every performance, read every word. He felt an urgency he hadn't known before. As he prepared to leave the archives, carefully re-engaging the security systems he had bypassed, Elias looked back at the dusty shelves, at the silent, forgotten consoles. He had come seeking answers, and he had found them. But the answers had opened up a whole new universe of questions, and perhaps a new path for his own life. The echo of the king's voice, the human voice, filled his mind, calling him not to worship, but to listen, to truly listen. The walk back to his quarters felt different. The air outside the restricted archives, though still the same temple air, seemed to vibrate with a new energy. The grand architecture of the Temple of Graceland, once a symbol of unshakable faith, now felt like a magnificent, beautiful shell built around a hidden human heart. Elias clutched his PAFAD, a treasure trove of forbidden knowledge close to his chest. He spent the next few days in a blur of intense study, feigning illness or meditation to avoid his regular duties. He couldn't risk anyone seeing the true contents of his PAFAD. He secluded himself in his small, austere room, the holographic projections of Elvis Presley's life playing silently before him. He zoomed in on the details of the ancient images. The T-shaped cross of the guitar was everywhere. He saw Elvis strumming it, posing with it, tossing it into the air. It wasn't a holy symbol created by the gods. It was a musical instrument, fundamental to his craft. He realized the irony. The very object they revered as a divine icon was simply a tool of human creativity. The star-spangled banner jumpsuit patterns, once interpreted as cosmic constellations or divine battle standards, were now clearly recognizable as symbols of ancient nations, particularly the one called America. Eagles, the flags, the specific colors, they weren't abstract, divine imagery, but cultural symbols of a particular time and place. He looked at the blazing sun of the stage lights, previously believed to be a manifestation of the king's radiant glory. He saw them for what they were: powerful lamps designed to illuminate a performer on a stage, to create an atmosphere of spectacle and excitement. The special effects, the smoke, the spotlights, all theatrical devices, not divine phenomena. The more he studied, the more the pieces clicked into place, creating a coherent though utterly revolutionary picture. The king's ascension in a flash of divine light. He found news reports of Elvis's death described as a sudden tragic event. The flash of divine light was almost certainly the result of optical degradation in the ancient footage, amplified by generations of reverent misinterpretation. It was a beautiful lie, a way to make sense of the departure of a beloved figure, his healing touch. Elias found clips of Elvis reaching out to fans, shaking hands, offering a kind smile. These were gestures of human connection, not divine miracles. The people's joy and emotional release were real, but they came from the power of shared music and genuine human connection. Not sacred rhythms that govern the universe. He listened to more of the music. Blues, gospel, country, rock and roll. It was vibrant, diverse, full of life and passion. It was human rhythm born from human creativity and emotion, not a divine dictate. Yet it did feel universal. It transcended time even now. The cognitive dissonance was immense. His entire worldview had shattered. The God he had worshipped for 20 cycles. The God he had worshipped for 20 cycles was a man and unless. He felt a profound sense of loss, a sort of grief for the simple, comforting certainty he had once possessed. The universe suddenly felt colder, less divinely ordered. But quickly this feeling was replaced by something else, a surge of awe. Think of it, a single human being, with nothing but his voice, his charisma, and his unique style, had created a cultural phenomenon so powerful that it transcended centuries, became misunderstood as divinity. He started rereading the sacred scriptures now with his new understanding. Don't be cruel. In the new context, it wasn't a divine commandment against malevolence, but a heartfelt plea from a lover. All shook up. Not the universe quaking before the king's might, but the joyous, confused flutterings of a young heart in love. It was almost more powerful this way. The emotions were real. The struggles were real. The joy was real. King wasn't a distant, unknowable deity. He was a human who experienced the full spectrum of human emotions and channeled them into art that uplifted millions. Elias realized that the essence of the faith wasn't wrong. Love, harmony, connection, joy. These were all central to Elvis Presley's music and life. The meaning had merely been elevated, abstracted, and perhaps accidentally deified. The biggest question now wasn't, who was the king? But, what do I do with this truth? He was a priest, bound by sacred vows. To reveal this truth would be to shatter the world of countless believers, to vitalize society itself. Yet to hide it felt like a betrayal of the very quest for truth that his priesthood was supposed to embody. He stood up, walking to a small window, and looking out at the sprawling city of Graceland, its towers reaching towards the twin moons, humming with the life of billions of faithful. They believed in the king. The divine being. How would they react to Elvis? The man, he felt a tremor of fear, but also a growing resolve. This truth, this incredible, heartwarming truth, was too important to remain hidden. But he couldn't just shout it from the temple steps. He needed help. He needed guidance. He needed to find someone who could understand, someone who could help him bridge the gap between faith and truth. His mind drifted to Brother Jethro, the kind, wise scholar who always seemed to look beyond the surface of things. Elias knew he couldn't keep this monumental discovery to himself. The weight of it was too heavy, too profound, yet the thought of revealing it to the High Council filled him with dread. They were guardians of the sacred truth, but their truth was the one he had just dismantled. He needed to talk to someone who might be open to a different interpretation, someone with wisdom and a compassionate heart. Brother Jethro came to mind. He was an elder priest, with a kindly face etched with years of study and quiet contemplation. He oversaw the temple's historical archives, a different section from the restricted ones, focusing on the post-ascension era and the development of their faith. Jethro had a reputation for intellectual curiosity and a gentle skepticism towards overly rigid doctrines. He often spoke of the ever-unfolding nature of truth. Elias sought him out during Jethro's evening meditation hour. He found the elder priest in his private study, a modest room filled with ancient physical books and scrolls, a rarity in their holographic age. The scent of genuine paper and aged ink was distinct. "Brother Jethro," Elias began, his voice a little shaky, "may I have a moment of your valuable time?" "Of course, Elias, you seem troubled. Your spirit is agitated." Elias hesitated, then made a decision. He would reveal everything, but carefully, gently. I have stumbled upon something, Brother Jethro, in the echoes of eternity that has profoundly challenged my understanding of the king. I need your wisdom. Jethro gestured to a seat. Speak, young one. No truth, however unsettling, should be feared, if it is truly truth. Elias began, choosing his words with utmost care. He didn't start with, "The king was a man." Instead, he started with the inconsistencies, the questions that had haunted him even before his discovery. He described the Hound Dog recording, the strangely human images, the name Elvis. He showed Jethro the recovered data projecting the images and audio from his David onto Jethro's console. Jethro listened, his expression shifting from calm attention to quiet fascination, then to a profound, almost stunned silence. He watched the flickering footage of Elvis on stage, heard his raw, powerful voice. He saw the photos of the jumpsuit, the guitar, the human interactions. When Elias finally played the segment of the interview where Elvis spoke of just wanting to be a regular fella, Jethro closed his eyes, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. A regular fella, Jethro murmured almost to himself. All this time, all these centuries. He opened his eyes, looking at Elias with a depth of emotion Elias had never seen before. You have uncovered the original scrolls of Graceland, Elias. Not merely the name of this hallowed place, but its true, forgotten history. Elias nodded, relief washing over him. Jethro understood. Graceland, Jethro continued, his voice hushed. We always believed it was a cosmic destination, the king's celestial palace, but it was his home. Elias showed him the satellite images. From the ancient drive, a modest estate, not a divine realm. A physical place, Brother Jethro, a home where he lived and eventually passed away. Jethro leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant, lost in thought. For centuries, we have preached that the king's ascension was a singular, unparalleled miracle, that he was beyond human, a direct manifestation of cosmic harmony. And now you present a world where he was a man, but a man whose spirit, whose music, whose message was so powerful it transcended death, Elias interjected, sensing Jethro's quiet distress. His impact was so profound that subsequent generations, trying to make sense of his loss and his incredible influence, deified him. They elevated him to a god not out of malice, but out of devotion, and a yearning for meaning. The king, we know he is perfect, untouchable. This Elvis, he seems so much more accessible, so much more human. He paused. And the music, Elias? It is raw, yes, but there is a power to it that our modulated hymns, beautiful as they are, sometimes lack a directness. It's about love, Brother Jethro, Elias said, his voice earnest. About joy, about overcoming sorrow, about connection. His "don't be cruel" isn't just a divine law. It's a plea from a human heart. His "love me tender" isn't just a cosmic decree. It's a song of profound affection. Jethro picked up one of his ancient physical books, running a hand over its aged cover. The original prophets, they were just men and women, delivering messages from the divine. What if the king was a prophet of consecrated, through music, a man who showed humanity its own divine potential, and in doing so became a legend, so grand that he was mistaken for a god? Elias felt a surge of hope. This was it. This was the bridge. Exactly, Brother Jethro. His life, his music, his message, they are profoundly spiritual, even if he was not a deity, perhaps even more so because he was a man who achieved such greatness. Jethro sighed, a deep contemplative sound. This knowledge it is, explosive. Elias, it could shatter faith, incite chaos. Our society is built upon the divinity of the king. But what if the truth, Brother Jethro, makes the faith stronger, more real, more relatable? Elias pressed. What if, knowing the king was a man, a human being who faced struggles and joys, makes his message even more powerful? His principles of take care of business, follow that dream, it's now or never, they were not divine decrees from on high, but wisdom born from a life, from human experience that makes them resonate far more deeply. You believe this can be revealed without destroying the very fabric of our world? I believe the core of the King's message, love, unity, joy through harmony, is still true. Elias replied firmly. Container that needs to change, not the essence, the truth, understood with compassion, can illuminate, not obliterate. Jethro stood up, walking to the window and gazing out at the temple spires, bathed in the soft glow of the twin moons. This is a journey, Elias, not a sprint. We must walk carefully, but I sense a new dawn on the horizon. The King has called us to this truth, and we must answer. The following days were a blur of intense calamitous study. Elias and Brother Jethro delved deeper into the retrieved data, cross-referencing information, debating interpretations, and marveling at the incredible story that unfolded before them. Elias, with his tech skills, meticulously restored more corrupted files, while Jethro, with his vast knowledge of historical context and theological development, helped interpret the nuances. They discovered the cultural context of Elvis's music, the social divisions he bridged, the revolutionary impact he had on youth, the way his performances electrified audiences. They saw clips of him speaking about peace, about generosity, about giving back to his fans. They watched his charitable endeavors, his genuine warmth towards people from all walks of life. He wasn't just an entertainer, Elias, Jethro mused one evening, watching a restored clip of Elvis handing out scarves to cheering fans, his face alight with joy. He was a unifier, a force of joy, a beacon of what humanity could achieve when it embraced its passions. He was truly the king of his time, Elias agreed. Even without the divine title, perhaps even more so, because he achieved it through sheer human talent and genuine connection. Their world, their entire belief system was based on a fundamental misinterpretation. It was a beautiful, comforting narrative, but a fabrication nonetheless, and revealing it carelessly could cause widespread panic, chaos, even the collapse of social order. We cannot simply declare this from the Grand Temple, Jethro warned. The faithful would not understand. They would feel betrayed, their very foundations crumbling. We must be strategic. We must find a way to reveal the truth, not as a demolition, but as an expansion of understanding. Elias nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. How do we bridge such a vast chasm, Brother Jethro? How do we take a god and present him as a man without losing the sacred meaning? We don't, Jethro said, his eyes twinkling. We reveal that the sacred meaning was always there embedded in the man. The principles of love, kindness, joy, integrity, these were not divinely bestowed by a distant king. They were lived and exemplified by a human being, Elvis Presley. That makes them even more powerful, Elias. It makes them attainable. They started by subtly introducing elements of the historical Elvis into their daily conversations and scholarly discussions, carefully gauging reactions. Jethro, in his lectures to junior priests, would speak of the profound human experience that underpins the king's cosmic message, or the earthly roots of divine inspiration. Elias, in his guided tours of the temple, would subtly draw attention to details on the ancient holograms, like the specific type of microphone or the human expressions on the faces of the crowd, encouraging pilgrims to look deeper. The reactions were varied. No one yet grasped the full implications, but the seeds of curiosity were being planted. One afternoon, as Elias was helping Jethro organize some recently unearthed historical texts from an off-world colony, a young acolyte named Lyra approached them. Lyra was bright, intensely curious, and always asked thoughtful, sometimes challenging questions. "Brother Jethro Elias," she began, holding a fragmented pre-ascension data shard. "I'm having trouble authenticating this. It purports to be a chart-topping hit by the king. But the mad show is unusual. It says Heartbreak Hotel and lists an unfamiliar producer." Jethro exchanged a look with Elias. This was a test, a chance to begin a wider, albeit still controlled revelation. "Lyra," Jethro said gently, "some of the oldest echoes are indeed challenging to interpret the language. The context much has been lost to time, but sometimes when you look closely you find a deeper meaning." Elias took the shard. "Show me, Lyra." The Heartbreak Hotel audio clip played, the melancholy human voice filling the small room. Lyra frowned, her brow furrowed. "It's different. Not like our hymns. It sounds sad." "Indeed," Jethro said. "What if the king, in his infinite wisdom, experienced human emotions so profoundly them into universal understanding? What if Heartbreak Hotel is not a cosmic place, but a metaphor for human loneliness, and the king, through his song, was acknowledging and comforting those who felt it?" Lyra listened to the song again, a thoughtful expression on her face. "So he wasn't just teaching us how to be joyful, but how to understand sorrow." "Precisely," Elias said, a quiet thrill going through him. "And how to find comfort even in the sadness. This song in its original form was incredibly powerful. It spoke to millions." Lyra nodded slowly. "I think I understand. It makes the message feel closer, more real." It was a small step, but a significant one. Lyra, unknowingly, had become their first conduit. They realized that the key was not to present Elvis as a dethroned god, but as a deeply human figure whose life and art carried the very divine essence they had always sought. King was not gone. He was simply more profoundly understood. The path forward was clear, though long and arduous. Gentle revelation, one heart at a time. The experience with Lyra gave Elias and Brother Jethro a clearer vision for their mission. They couldn't simply drop the truth like a stone into calm waters. They had to introduce it as a new current, slowly changing the flow of the river. Their goal wasn't to destroy the faith, but to deepen it, to make it more resonant and relatable by connecting it to its human origin. They began to selectively share more of the restored data with a small trusted circle of junior priests and acolytes chosen for their open minds and genuine spiritual curiosity. They never presented it as, "This is the truth, and everything you know is a lie." Instead, they framed it as new insights into the king's ancient wisdom, or deeper revelations from the time of his earthly sojourn. They focused on the message of the man, Elvis Presley. One evening, Elias gathered a small group, including Lyra, in a secluded meditation chamber. He projected a montage of restored video clips, Elvis performing, interacting with fans, laughing, and even moments of quiet reflection. Overlaid, Elias played snippets of his interviews and song lyrics newly translated and contextualized. King's principle of "take care of business in a flash," Elias explained, pausing a clip of Elvis on stage, radiating energy. "We interpret it as swift devotion, divine action, but listen to his words from this ancient interview. When I get on stage, I gotta give it everything I got. The people, they paid good money. They came to see a show, and I ain't gonna disappoint them. You gotta take care of business, give your best every single time." So it's about integrity, about dedication to your craft and to others. "Exactly," Jethro chimed in. "It's about effort, about respect for your commitments. It's a very human yet profoundly spiritual principle of excellence." Next, Elias showed them the lyrics to "If I Can Dream," a powerful, heartfelt ballad. The traditional interpretation was the king's divine promise of a harmonious future. In the time of his earthly life, Elias narrated, the king lived in an era of great turmoil, divisions, strife, injustice. Listen to his own voice, not the modulated hymns, but the true voice and yearning. Elvis's voice filled the room raw with emotion. There must be lights burning brighter somewhere. Got to be birds flying higher in a sky more blue. If I can dream of a better land, where all my brothers walk hand in hand, tell me why, oh why, can't my dream come true? Tears welled in Lyra's eyes, and others in the group were visibly moved. This was not a detached deity making a decree. This was a man yearning, suffering with his people, and offering hope. This is not just a promise, Jethro said softly. It is an invitation for us to dream, to strive, to make that better land a reality. It empowers us to be part of the divine plan, not just recipients of it. They discussed Love Me Tender. They revealed it was a love song to a woman, a human expression of deep affection. Initially, this caused some discomfort. But the king's love is universal, one young priest protested. And it is, Elias countered gently. But if a human being can feel such profound, tender love for another human being, imagine the capacity for love that human potential holds. The king, Elvis, showed us that the greatest love starts with connection. Slowly, carefully, they dissected the teachings, reinterpreting them through the lens of Elvis Presley. The man, Don't Be Cruel, became about personal responsibility in relationships, about empathy. Follow That Dream became about individual passion and perseverance, not just blind obedience to fate. A little less conversation, a little more action, transformed from a divine directive to a practical philosophy of proactive, living and genuine engagement. What emerged was not a weaker faith, but a richer, more accessible one. The messages were no longer abstract divine pronouncements, but grounded human wisdom, made all the more powerful because a real person had lived them, sown them, embodied them. The king did not come from the stars fully formed as a god, Jethro concluded one session. He didn't just tell us to love thy neighbor. He genuinely reached out to everyone. That, my friends, is true divinity, not a being above us, but a potential within us. The room was silent, filled with a sense of profound understanding. The awe was still there, but it was a different kind of awe, an awe for humanity's capacity for greatness, for love, for creating something timeless. The heartwarming aspect was in the realization that the king was not a distant, unreachable god, but a human brother who had shown them the way, not by divine decree, but by example. The weight on Elias's shoulders began to lighten, replaced by a sense of quiet purpose. The truth, he realized, was not just about facts. It was about connection. The small group of priests and acolytes, having absorbed the initial revelations, now became Elias and Jethro's silent allies. They began to subtly integrate their new understanding into their daily duties. Lyra, for example, started playing ancient Elvis tunes quietly on her personal comm unit during her studies, sparking curiosity among her peers. The time came for a more public, albeit still gentle, revelation. Brother Jethro, being a senior scholar, had a unique opportunity. The annual Festival of Harmony sermon, a major address to the entire congregation of Graceland, broadcast throughout the city. This was their chance to begin to reframe the narrative, not as an expose, but as a deeper dive into the origins of their faith. Elias and Jethro meticulously prepared Jethro's sermon. They wove in historical facts disguised as newly discovered ancient parables or scholarly reinterpretations. They focused on the universal themes of Elvis's music: love, hope, resilience, connection. The day of the sermon dawned bright and clear. The Grand Temple was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. Elias stood among the junior priests, his heart a frantic drumbeat in his chest. Lyra caught his eye from the acolyte section and gave him a small, encouraging nod. Jethro stepped onto the central dais, his calm, wise presence instantly commanding attention. He began with the traditional opening, invoking the king's blessings. But then he deviated. But today I wish to share with you a deeper understanding, gleaned from newly restored ancient echoes. He paused, letting the words sink in. We have long spoken of the king's humble beginnings, his miraculous raise from obscurity. But what if those beginnings were even more humble than we imagined? What if things? Faces were etched with confusion, curiosity, and some with outright skepticism. King, in his boundless capacity to connect, brought this rhythm to the people, showing them that divine harmony can be found not just in spiritual contemplation, but in the vibrant, joyful expression of life itself. He then played a short, carefully chosen snippet of the original Hound Dog, recording just the infectious beat and a snippet of Elvis's distinctive vocalization without the full controversial lyrics. The raw energy was undeniable. A few heads started to sway. His blue suede shoe, Jethro continued, displaying an ancient photo of the actual shoes, were not a symbol of cosmic purity, but a personal treasure, a simple human possession. Dedichasach to not step on them. The king taught us the sacred others, persimmon them. The king taught us the sacring of persimmon them, Jethro continued, weaving historical facts into the familiar narrative, presenting Elvis's human life as a testament to the divine potential within all humanity. He spoke of Elvis's generosity, his struggles, his compassion, framing them as examples for living a truly king-like life. He showed images of Elvis interacting with fans, his genuine smile, his open arms. The king did not come to us as a distant god, Jethro concluded, his voice swelling with emotion. He taught us that it's now or never to embrace this truth, to live with a little less conversation and a little more action, and to follow that dream that lies within the human images of the king. The raw, joyful music resonated deeply. It felt closer, more real. Elias saw some wiping away tears. Others had looks of profound contemplation. The reverence was still there, but it was shifting, transforming. It was no longer just for a distant god, but for an extraordinary human being whose life and legacy had shaped their world in ways they were only just beginning to understand. After the sermon, a buzz filled the temple. People didn't storm out in outrage. They looked at the stained glass, at the holy relics with new eyes. Elias overheard a young woman telling her friend, "He was like us, but so much more. It makes me want to listen to his psalms again, truly listen." The revelation was gentle as they had planned. It wasn't a sudden shattering blow, but a thoughtful, compassionate invitation to a deeper truth. The faith had not been broken. It had been expanded. And Elias felt for the first time a true sense of hope for the future of Graceland, a future where the king's message would live on, now enriched by the authentic, heartwarming story of the man Elvis Presley. The Festival of Harmony sermon marked a turning point. The initial shock gave way to a wave of curiosity and discussion that rippled throughout Graceland. The High Council, initially hesitant and wary, found themselves unable to suppress the questions and the growing desire for deeper knowledge. Brother Jethro's gentle approach, coupled with Elias's undeniable evidence, had opened a door that could not be easily closed. Soon, the once forbidden frigid archives were gradually opened to a select group of scholars and devoted truth seekers. Elias, no longer just a junior priest, became a central figure in this transformation, guiding others through the trove of rediscovered history, patiently explained the context, shared the music, and helped people bridge the gap between their ingrained faith and the news and truth. The changes were gradual but profound. The Grand Temple of Graceland didn't abandon its sacred symbols, but their interpretations evolved. TCB lightning bolt, once a sign of divine power, now represented the swift, electrifying impact of Elvis's music and his dedication to taking care of business. The golden microphone, still revered, became a symbol of the power of the human voice to connect, to inspire, to uplift. The most heartwarming change came with the music. Slowly, tentatively at first, the original recordings of Elvis Presley's songs began to be played in public spaces. Not just the modulated hymns, but the raw, vibrant human versions. At first it was startling for many, so different from what they knew. But soon people began to embrace the infectious rhythms, the heartfelt lyrics, the sheer joy and emotion that poured from the ancient recordings. Children too young to be burdened by centuries of doctrine were captivated. They danced to jailhouse rock with uninhibited joy. They sang along to "Can't Help Falling in Love" with innocent passion. They connected directly with the spirit of the music, unmediated by layers of theological interpretation. One evening, Elias walked through the central plaza of Graceland, a place usually filled with quiet contemplation. Tonight, it buzzed with a different kind of energy. A holographic projector, once reserved for ferments, now played a restored full-length concert, footage of Elvis from his prime. The image was remarkably calm, the colors vibrant. Elvis in his white jumpsuit captivated the audience. His voice soared, dipped, whispered, and roared, and the crowd, projected in full splendor, wasn't just reverent. They were electrified. They screamed, they swayed, they sang along, tears streaming down their faces, not of spiritual revelation, but of pure, unadulterated human emotion. Elias saw a young family nearby. Parents with tears in their eyes were watching the screen, but their children were doing something else. A little girl, no older than 7, was mimicking Elvis's hand gestures, swaying her hips to the beat. Her little brother was attempting a crude air guitar. They weren't worshiping a god, they were delighting in a performance, connecting with a human artist. Brother Jethro joined Elias, a contented smile on his face. "See, Elias? The faith has not crumbled. It has simply blossomed." "He was always here, wasn't he, Brother Jethro?" Elias said, gazing at the holographic Elvis. His spirit, his music, his message, we just needed to understand how. "Indeed," Jethro replied. "We sought a divine king in the heavens, when his true royalty lay in his heart." His voice, his profound connection to humanity, the king did Macton. It became less about worshiping a distant deity and more about embodying the principles of a remarkable human being. Sermons now focused on Elvis's life stories, his acts of kindness, his perseverance, and the universal messages in his songs. Pilgrims came to Graceland, not just to venerate relics, but to learn about the man Elvis Presley, who had lived in this very spot and brought so much light to the world. The phrase "the king" didn't disappear. It remained, but with a richer, more nuanced meaning. He was still the king, but now understood as the king of rock and roll, the king of hearts, the king of connection. His divinity was redefined not as supernatural power, but as the extraordinary capacity of a human spirit to touch and transform the world through love, passion, and music. Elias, once a simple priest, now found himself a scholar, a guide, a storyteller. He spent his days sharing the true story of Elvis Presley, his voice filled with an earnest joy that was deeper than any reverence he had known before. He had sought truth, and in finding it, he had helped illuminate a path for millions. The music of Elvis Presley, once confined to ancient, corrupted data drives, now echoed through the futuristic city of Graceland. It was a new dawn, a harmonious blend of faith and truth, where the legend of the king, Elvis, Aaron, Presley, lived on more vibrant and heartwarming than ever before. His legacy was not just a religion, but a timeless celebration of the human spirit, forever rocking and rolling its way through the ages.